Hi, this is Todd Merrill. Welcome to Tales from the Sky Lounge, a podcast about business, consulting, and venture investing. We get out there in the world and we talk to people who are making it happen and we get their stories. Can you believe it's been a year since we last talked? And we've had a lot of people on the show, talked to a lot of business and consulting and venture investing. A lot of people are getting out there in the world, making things happen, and the world is changing at an unprecedented rate. So look forward to a lot of interesting stories next year, and we have a lot of amazing guests lined up, and look forward to spending some quality time with you. So here are some compilations from the best travel stories from last year, and I look forward to seeing everyone in the new year, and bye for now.
Tales from the Sky Lounge is all about travel and getting out there in the world. Do you have any great travel stories you want to share with us? I know you have a couple.
Yeah. Maybe this is short travel story, but at some point, one of our clients at Well&Co was a party solutions company, software as a service, and they got a request from the FBI because somebody that had robbed a bank. They suspected that person was in one of the parking lots they managed.
Oh man.
And they knew that we have cameras there. So they wanted to see if in our system we got something. So we start, not me directly, but one of the guys told me hey, let's review. And we started reviewing. This system has a lot of OCR, for license plates and so on. And the guy came on a car, just parked in front of the parking lot, but he didn't come in to the parking lot with the car. And we could not capture the license plate. And then we were looking at the video. So what's happening there? What's happening? And then one of my teammates said, well, let's say what his gesture is. I started looking at corporate. We moved into detective mode. And they started analyzing their gestures, and they say, oh, I know what's happening. This guy is coming on an Uber. This is an Uber car. Okay. So from there, we told that was an Uber, that we thought that was an Uber. And we got 2 weeks after that, we got the email from the FBI saying they captured the guy.
Okay.
They called Uber and said at what time, at X time, somebody was left at this place. Can you determine who was it? And this was displayed. They called the person and did all the trace guard to find the victims. So
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a crazy story.
Yeah.
How often do you make it down to Colombia? Is that kind of an interesting travel experience?
It is. I have to say that there's a lot to see in Colombia and a lot to miss as well.
Mhm.
So yes, it is. And I definitely invite people to visit Colombia. There's a lot of amazing things to see. So yes, I move between two sides, and I try to be connected with my Well&Co team. So they come and I go. And then that's how we kind of run. But we stay in touch. So I keep doing that, and I keep, talking with them and in constant contact with them.
You connect through Miami? Is that halfway?
Yes.
Yeah. And then, okay. Very cool.
Let me ask you about traveling. It's all about getting out in the world and making things happen, right? I know you're a traveler, and you probably got some really cool travel stories. You got anything you want to share with us about travel or travel in general?
Well, first of all, after 35 years of flying almost every week around the world, I can tell you that I'm a very happy man that I don't fly much more than a few times a year now. And God bless Zoom, because I can do the laundry while I'm working. So this is a plus. But I'll tell you, I have been very fortunate. I've been very fortunate to work all over the world. I've worked in Japan. I worked out of Canada for years. I have been all over South America. I've been all over Europe, and all sorts of strange places too. I've even been in Finland, for heaven's sake. And two stories come to mind. One was being in South Africa, in Cape Town. And Cape Town is well known, especially in its sort of the nature preserve down by Cape Point, which is where you overlook the ocean. They have a very unruly troop of baboons that have been there for ages and ages, and they are thieving little extortionist buggers. And and they've been known to rip things out of people's cars and rip sandwiches. And so I had been warned about it. And so I had driven down there with a colleague to go see what Cape Point was all about. And this baboon came up to the window, looking for his entry fee. And I rolled up the window. Just like a person, very calmly walked over front of the car, climbed onto the hood of the car, squatted, looked over his shadow, looked over his shoulder at me, and went. And then finished, looked over his shoulder again, and sauntered off. And then I kid you not, and my second story was
Oklahoma.
Yes. How do you explain that to the rental company?
Yeah.
And the second one, which was a little bit more scary, oh my God, I've got several. I got detained. I used to do a lot of work in Colombia. And unfortunately, at the time, I had, a mustache that made me look even more suspect than I do now. Mm-hmm. And I went there with some frequency. I was working with Unisys at the time, just so you don't think I was doing something untoward. And I had to get this non-resident business visa. And, I went through all this stuff. And on one trip out, I got detained by the Colombian immigration people, who happened to be big, scary people in fatigues with machine guns, because I was on a code share flight.
Okay.
And they didn't recognize the flight. It was an American Airlines flight, but the flight in Colombia was flagged as whatever the airline was flight. And they took me in, armed guards, and they interrogated me right down to the steel table and the light dangling over my head.
Oh, man.
And my Spanish isn't so great. And their English suddenly became non-existent until finally we worked it all out after I sweated about 12 pounds into my shirt and left. And all of a sudden their English became impeccable and we left. And I have others too, but we'll save that for another podcast.
Sure. We'll have you on again. And which airport are you flying out of these days?
Typically I'll fly out of Boston. I live just before the coast of Maine in New Hampshire now, but I fly out of Logan. But I lived in New York, flew out of JFK and LaGuardia all the time. So I did a lot of LAX, JFK stuff.
Oh my God. Yeah. God bless you for that. You survived.
Barely. I have no hair, but I survived.
Yeah, there you go.
You got any great travel stories that you'd like to share with us?
I do, but that might be not on a podcast. I know you encouraged me to talk about memorable airports, and I think I would love to share one of the most memorable airports for me. It was one of the first I got to see. You mentioned LaGrange, Georgia. It's been a minute, but I was raised in Roberta, Georgia. So I was raised in a very small town. And so my first city, and I can't even believe this is true, but it is true, and it probably twisted me for good for a long time, was Moscow. And so my first big airport was Sheremetyevo-2. And I got the opportunity to fly in and out of that a few times when I was younger, college age, and just afterwards. And so that made getting the opportunity to study abroad at the Pushkin Institute in Moscow really helped shape my view of how different the world can be from what you're used to. I found it, of course, at that time in life, absolutely inspiring and energizing. And isn't that what travel is so good at, is opening the eyes? But that's one of my more interesting travel stories. Of course, it was back at a time when there were no cell phones. I couldn't call home. I was really very much on my own, and being dropped into something so foreign was really exciting. And I I always like to encourage people, especially young people, to get way outside of your comfort zone because you're gonna find that is great. You'll probably be swimming and then it'll become your comfort zone.
Very cool.
Well, Matt, it's about getting out there in the world and talking to people and making things happen. You got any great travel stories you want to share with us?
Travel stories. I got a call out of the blue, and it was from Ernst and Young. And this is 2018, 2019, when I was still traveling a lot. And the call was from Ernst and Young, and I was like, "Is this a scam? Like Ernst and Young doesn't call me. Like, how did they get my name, etc." And so it really took me a while to sort of get comfortable with the conversation. But they were like, you came highly recommended. We need a strategy facilitator. Can't tell you who the client is until we get an NDA in place. But are you available, to go to India and conduct this 2-day strategy session? And the whole time I'm thinking, seems like Ernst & Young would have strategy facilitators. Like, why would they want me for this? And so anyways, I continued the conversation and figured out that it was legit, signed the NDA. It turned out to be Sony Network Pictures Incorporated, which is like, a massive, kind of the cable company in India. Right. And so, they wanted help with a 5-year strategy to go from $1 billion to $5 billion in 5 years. And so I met with the 13, the gig was, I met with the 13 C-suite executives, and I worked them through a 2.5-day session to come up with the new vision and the new plan, et cetera, et cetera. But the interesting part of the story is, can you, come and facilitate this? And can you be in India in 9 days? And I thought, I don't have a visa. I don't even know what it means to go to India. Certainly have never been there. Don't know what I'm doing. And, they figured out all the things that they needed to do. So I get on a plane, don't know where I'm going. I land, there's somebody picks me up in a car. I end up in Ernst & Young's offices there, I think kind of scoping me out and, also preparing me for like the people I was going to work with. And then we fly to this place called Udaipur, right? Which is one of the, one of the regions, right? One of the cities in one of the regions centrally. And the hotel used to be a palace, right? And so the palace is like every floor, every wall, inside and out is made of marble. And so you walk through this metal detector, you pull up in sort of the black, SUV, and you walk through a metal detector and there's guys with automatic weapons standing there. And you're like, where am I? And it's a hotel, just happens to be one of the top 10 hotels in the world. Right. And so it's like a football field in this direction, a football field in this direction, a football field in this direction of used to be a palace. Right. And now it's like this, $8,000-9,000 a night hotel. And this is where I actually got to do the facilitation of this thing with these executives. So I'll never, ever forget it.
Wow. That's awesome.
I mean, literally there's peacocks walking around, right, in these gardens. This place was so extraordinary.
How cool is that? That is awesome.
Neat.
Wow. I know you're probably a million miler on a couple different airlines. So you got any great travel stories you want to share with us?
Oh my God, I've got so many great travel stories. Where do I even start? The funniest, I don't know if it's funny. It's probably 2-part funny. Funny and not so funny, and just kind of the realities of travel. Me and my head of sales, this is back at Accelerator, we were coming from Japan. So we were doing like a worldwide 2-week trip, which is really difficult when you go cross world, especially, we went from Japan, and we did Korea and a few other places all the way to the Middle East. And we did, we did Abu Dhabi, and we did Spain and a couple other places, then eventually back to San Francisco, and trying to carry 2 weeks worth of clothing and different, it's snowing in Japan and of course, get in the desert in Abu Dhabi, and sort of and Madrid and Spain. And so that was really crazy. But like, the funniest thing was, so we were going to a event in Spain, and we were kind of a little bit last minute at booking. And so my assistant was like, book something. We just need a flat. We don't care. We're just going to fly in. We're going to be there a couple of days, and we're going to be gone, and we're traveling. This is the end of our trip. So we get to, we get to, it's like we've been traveling. I think we flew from, I think it was Korea. I forgot where we flew from. I think it was either Korea or somewhere else. And we flew all the way into Madrid. We get there. It's, we've been traveling, feels like for 2 days. We get there. It's late at night. We go to check into our hotel and we can only get one room. So we're like, no problem. Just get one room and just get a double, right? Europe.
Don't care.
So just get a double. We don't care, like we're traveling together all the time. Whatever, business guys, like it doesn't really matter. We check into this hotel. We're tired. We get it. We come in. We got a double, 2 beds. But in Europe, like a double is really like a single, like a small little bed squished together, especially sorry, I said Madrid. We were in Barcelona. So in Barcelona, in a little flat, and literally it was a double, what would call a double in America, a small bed. That was like the bed. So, and we were both, and we were 2 relatively, tall dudes, so that was sort of we ended up having to stay there for 2 days, literally sleeping in the same bed together. It's like you turn this way, you turn that way. And there was nothing we could do because there was no hotels and no flats left. It was one of those huge, events in the city. And so then like to finalize the story. So then we're like, okay, whatever, 2 days, doesn't matter. Who cares? Full of meetings, 2 days. We get on we're exhausted. It's been 2 weeks. We've gone on the road traveling. Finally going to get on our flight, on an El Al flight, direct from Barcelona to San Francisco. The longest flight I think I've ever been on in my life. It was like a 13 or 12 and a half hour flight or 13 hours, something that was very long. So we get on this flight and they put us on the last row, huge El Al flight, last row in the middle, back up against the lavatories. And on these long flights where people congregate on the long flights, in the lavatory, like at the end where the lavatories are, and they slam them all, slam, open, slam.
God.
And we're trying to sleep. So we get on this plane. First class is completely empty because it's like a $15,000 or $20,000 first class. There's one dude from the Middle East with a freaking hawk, literally on his, or whatever they call it. I think they're falcons, I think they call them, right? And there's nobody else in first class or business class. I think business class maybe had 2 or 3 people in it, but it's virtually empty. So at the gate, we're like, we want to upgrade. We'll upgrade right now. How do we upgrade? Because we looked at our seats and we're like, we got to upgrade. And they're like, you can't, it's too late. You have to upgrade with the bursar on the plane. And we're like, okay, but can we, is there seats? Oh yeah, plenty of seats. You just upgrade with the bursar on the plane. They'll let you upgrade. So we get on the plane, we call get in our seats, we call the bursar. The bursar comes back. We're like, we would like to move to, business class, right now. We'll just pay it right now. And they're like, she's like, I think she said, $10,000 each. And we're like, $10,000? It's empty. The plane doors are going to close in a minute, right? Like, we're like, no, we'll give you $2,000 each of us, right? Like $2,000 right now, $2,000. They literally El Al I said El Al, I meant, the other, sorry, not El Al, that's Israeli. The other, Middle Eastern, airline, I can't think of the name of it.
Qatar.
Qatari, yeah. And they were like, no, they wouldn't do it. Like we went 2,000, they went to 3,000. I think we went to $4,000, because we were so desperate and she would literally not do it at all. And so we ended up just sitting just literally like this the whole time. Both, there was like a 4-seater in the middle. We were sitting like this the whole time, 13-hour flight, longest flight I'd ever been on. It was awful.
Couldn't do that.
And that's, it was so bad. But we were just like, it must be nice to be, a rich company that doesn't need the money. So.
Jeez, holy smokes.
That's awful.
Just wrap it up, Michael. You're a traveling man. I know you've got some really awesome travel stories to share. Can you pick one for us and maybe share that with us?
Yeah. So I thought about which one to use because, like you said, I've traveled a lot in my career, and I think I settled on the following one. So I had a 4-month-old daughter, and I was working as a management consultant in Boston, and I was working for one of the more prominent companies from India, and the phone rings, and am I allowed to name names?
Sure, why not?
So Ratan Tata.
Okay.
I could have lunch with you in Paris tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Yes, sir.
Like all good consultants, I kept a There was a thing called the Garmin bag in those days that we could travel with. This was probably 1991 or 90 or something like that. And I just called. My wife said, because it was my anniversary. I said, our anniversary dinner tomorrow night? And she goes, yeah. I said, you might want to cancel. She goes, why? I'm going to Paris. Here we go. Sorry, I got to get on a plane. So I fly to Paris and we have this great lunch. And this is where the fun part of the story kind of really starts. And so it's like probably 2:33, and I had to get back to De Gaulle from downtown central Paris to get a plane, an Air France plane to connect to an American Airlines plane in London to get back onto the East Coast of the United States for a business meeting the next day. And I said, it's right in that time zone where I'll take the metro because it may not be faster, but it's predictable.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. And I'm not going to hop in a cab. So my luck, as you can see De Gaulle, and there's a problem, and we sit there, and I'm like, now I'm starting to look at my watch. And I get out of the train and I get into the inner terminal bus, and I don't remember all the terminal letters in De Gaulle, and we get to Terminal E, and I'm trying to get to G, which is like around a loop. And I said to the bus driver, and he's just sitting there. I said, "Can we go? I'm trying to catch my plane." He goes, "We will go when we will go." And if it says anything else, we're definitely not going. So I finally get to my terminal, and I go running through the door with my briefcase and my full-size Garmin bag, and I emigrate out of the country, and I go walking up to the gate really quickly, and there's my plane sitting there attached to the jetway, and I probably had 30, 35 minutes to spare. And he said, "Here's my ticket." There were these things called paper tickets in those days. The gate attendant says, "You weren't here 45 minutes before the flight. You can't board the flight." I said, "It's sitting right there. It's not going anywhere for another half hour. You're here in time. You're not boarding the flight." I said, "Well, who do I talk to? I want to try and get back to the U.S. And he go, "Talk to that guy over there." So I pick up my bag and I go over to this guy who's sitting typing something into a terminal. I said, "Can you help me?" He goes, "When I'm done with what I'm doing, I will help you." And I said, "Yep. Okay." I cue the Jeopardy music. Da, 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 da. I said, "I need to get back to the U.S. tonight." And he types into his terminal. He says, "British Airways has a flight going out of terminal whatever, which is the octopus-like terminal that can get you to London, that can get you on a BA flight back to," I can't remember if it was going to New York or Boston. I said, "Okay." I go, now I have to emigrate back into France.
Oh, yeah. Oh, great.
And as I go coming out the door of the terminal, there goes the interterminal bus.
Right.
And,
wonderful. Yeah.
I hop in a cab and said, "Take me to terminal," I can't remember the letter. And the guy starts grousing. And I said, "Look, I'm going to give you the same amount of money in francs that you would get as though you were taking me to central Paris. And I know that the way the system works, because you're just taking me from one terminal to another, you get back at the front of the line anyway. So just shut up and drive."
Oh, God.
And I didn't want to be rude, but so I go rushing into the British Airways terminal. I go up to the counter and I say to the guy, "Can I get back to the States tonight?" And he goes to his computer and he says, "Yep." And I said, "Great. Book." He said, "We have one more business class seat left out of London." I go, "Terrific. I'm not going to be crammed in the back of the plane." And, and I hand him my American Airlines ticket. And he goes, "Oh." I said, "Oh, what?" He goes, "Well, again, people who weren't around those days, people like me, remember the computer systems didn't talk to each other." Because I have to call American and get permission to transfer this ticket to a British Airways ticket. I said, "Stop right there." And he goes, "What?" I go, "How long before the plane to London leaves do I have to be at the gate? Because if I have a time limit, I'm just going to buy a new ticket. When I get back to the States, I'll just return the ticket for a credit." He goes, "Oh, as long as you're there before we close the door, we don't care." So I said, fine. So he called American Airlines, and American Airlines said, "Of course," gave him the right code. And I got my British Airways seat, and I walked up to the British Airways flight, and I got on the plane, and I made it to London, and I made it back to the States, and unnecessarily hassled. And people should be really glad for the technologies that let all these things talk to themselves now, because there was a time it was all manual.
Yeah. Yeah.
that's my little story in the time we had, from just a fun snippet of no stress, a lot of stress, a lot of stress. I think I'll have a scotch sitting in my seat flying to London.
And then how did your wife take it when you came home?
Okay, that's that. So because I traveled as a consultant like 200 plus nights a year and racked up frequent flyer miles like, they were candy. And again, this is still paper tickets. I said, well, I call up American. Well, one of the things I used to do is I used to give my assistant 4 ticket vouchers for her holiday gift, because the last thing I wanted to do is get in an airplane. So I call up American, and I was in the first group of people ever to be platinum on American. So I call them up. I get 2 first-class tickets to Paris. And my wife had not, at that point, never been to Paris. And I put them in a drawer. They send me the nice American cardboard folder and the crappy paper ticket that was inside it. With it was like carbon paper.
Sure, yeah.
Right. And I put it in my underwear drawer where she would never go. And I come home from a business trip 4 or 5 months later, and she's upset about something. And look, she's new mom's. It's a lot of stress being a new mom. And I said, I wasn't going to tell her and I had arranged to fly my parents up, and they were going to take care of our daughter. Then we were going to go for her anniversary. So, exactly a year later. So I said, I'll let her know. And I hand her one of these ticket envelopes, and she opens it up and goes, "You're going to Paris again?" And I go, "Look at whose name is on the ticket." And she sees her name and then breaks out in tears. So,
that's nice.
And we had a great trip to Paris.
Very nice.
That's how. So it does sort of have a really, really happy ending and a very, very memorable trip for the two of us.
Wow.
And our first trip away from our daughter. So a toddler at that point.
Super memorable. And Paris is great, except for the airport. A lot of people don't like that airport.
Flying American in those days, you went to Orly. You didn't go to De Gaulle.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That would be better for sure. Wow.
Yeah. But now we're at the stage where all airports stink.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for sure.
It's all about traveling and get out there in the world. Any great travel stories you want to share with us?
Yeah, I have 2. One is maybe what not to do, and then one is
anti-story.
Yeah, and then maybe well, one thing that I recommend. I remember when I first flew to China. This was over a decade ago, I guess, at this point. And a buddy of mine, he's like, "Hey, dude, I want to take you to this burger joint before you leave. It's my favorite burger joint." And I'm in my, I don't know, I just graduated college, I think, at the time. So I'm 21 or something. And so I was like, yeah, that sounds good. So we eat this super greasy burger. I mean, it's 3,000 calories worth of just burger and fries. Yeah. And so then you got basically an 18-hour flight to China, and I'm sitting in the back seat of a I don't know, whatever jet. And so I would recommend not eating something super greasy and being on an 18-hour flight, no matter what class of cabin you fly. That's my number one recommendation is doesn't matter if you're flying from one place to the other, just don't do it. In fact, try to fast and not eat anything. That's what I learned. And then the do. So I think, I'm not a big luxuries person, I would say generally, but my wife and I, we just got married in India a couple months ago. And so I flew my mom and I, this is the first time I've done this, flew us business class on British Airways. And man, I didn't even want the plane to land. Because you're getting drinks, you're getting food served. They have an unlimited menu of things to watch on the TV. And I was really impressed with the new cabins that they have. It's it basically feels like you're in your own room, So I would say 1, don't do, and 1, if you can swing it, I would definitely splurge on at least once on an international flight, business class on some of these new planes. I'm sure they're all very good, but British Air was legit.
Awesome. Yeah, that's definitely time to use your SkyMiles points.
on that
That's it.
very, very long intercontinental flight for sure.
100%. Yeah.
So I would love to hear some of these roadshow stories. Have you got any great travel stories that you'd love to share with us over your career?
Yeah, one of my favorites was I was working for a PE firm for a portfolio company in Columbus, Indiana. If you've not been to Columbus, Indiana, it's a fairly small town halfway between Louisville and Indy. And Cummins Engine has a big place down there. So there's a lot of truck part manufacturing right in that area. So the company had operations all over Europe and South Africa. And I was selected to work through part of their 100-day plan post-acquisition.
Got it.
And I grew up in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Okay. You can get from the one edge of town to the other in less than 15 minutes. Okay. So me getting on a plane, doing work in London, in Germany, in the Netherlands. I was on this trip for this company, and they needed a volunteer to go to South Africa. It's the middle of the summer, South Africa, never been. I raised my hand. So instead of flying home, I go to South Africa, which was terrific, fun. We worked through the entire piece. I spent 5 days in South Africa. I was provided with a driver, and the plant manager was a red wine aficionado.
Oh, very nice.
In Cape Town, just north of Cape Town, the vineyards.
Yeah.
So for a week, I went out to dinner with him, and at the end, he took me up to Stellenbosch, and it was crazy. So then the flight back, Cape Town to Johannesburg to Frankfurt to London to Chicago.
Jeez, that's a long day. A couple days.
32 hours.
Holy smokes. And then that's what, 5 planes? So
yeah, 5 planes, 32 hours. I
can't even imagine.
And it was really the last trip I took as a road warrior, because my wife had called me midway through it and said, your kids are teenagers not right now, and they're not going to be teenagers again. It might make some sense that you move off the road.
Yeah, I think that's smart. That's very smart.
And it was for me, again, the plant in South Africa, rhodium. Okay, rhodium is only available there and in Japan.
Oh, weird. Okay.
And catalytic converters are made with rhodium in it. And so any exhaust system in a car needs rhodium to clean the exhaust. And when you hear this story of people stealing catalytic converters from cars, in the last 5 years, it's because of the rhodium.
No kidding. It used to be like platinum, I think, right?
Yeah, right. but I mean, crazy that, things I would have never learned in a million years, just by taking the trek. So, another time, I was working with a refinancing for about a $75 million company, really kind of a recap, right? And I am literally on the phone while I'm in line trying to get through the Toronto Customs to come back home for this was 2019. And I'm saying, we can't do this deal, guys, financially, because it's going to put you in default within 2 weeks with your new lender. And the CEO and COO refused to keep $800,000 in the business that needed to be in the business for this to work. They pulled it out personally.
That's horrible.
Yeah, and when that happened, it was time for me to leave, because you know what? If you're not above board and you're pulling money out, I can lead you to water, but you're going to have to drink and understand the implications for something that it put them. It ended up blowing up a growth capital investment because, and of course, it was the CFO's fault at the end of the day, is what they told us. But, or, the story they were telling everybody else. But the fact of the matter was, no, all of this was already articulated to you, showed to you in the numbers, and you decided that your individual greed was more important than the business that you were running. And if that's your motive operation, feel free to find a new CFO, which I left shortly thereafter. So, but I did get through immigration that day. And on the flight home, my passport fell out of my backpack.
Oh, no.
And because it was U.S. immigration in Toronto, okay, it's somewhere on a 737 flying around 5 years later.
Oh, God. They're going to find it when they decommission it.
But
Holy
yeah,
smokes.
and then so from then on, that passport will never leave my sight.
Do you have one of those neck things where you kind of like, you can feel it just in case, under the sweater, under the jacket?
Absolutely, yeah. Todd. Yeah, no, because I always put it in the same place.
Right. Yeah.
And I reached in and I'm like, oh no.
That's a horrible day. Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you just have to answer a few questions and then get through and show your driver's license kind of thing?
Well, actually, because I was already through it and it fell out.
Okay.
After immigration, technically in Toronto, I was in the United States already.
So you were on the good side of the line, and then
I was on the good side of the line. Otherwise, I would have been. Oh, that would have been absolutely no fun.
That was one of the Jimmy Rogers had Investment Biker. I think it was one of the books where he rode motorcycle all over the world, and that was one of his learnings. It's like anytime there's a control checkpoint, get through as immediately as possible, and then figure it out, right? So it sounds like you did that. Get through, and then take a breath.
That that could summarize a 40-year career, Tom.
Get through the checkpoint before you screw around. Yeah.
You got any great travel stories you want to share with us?
I don't know if they're super exciting. I mean, I had one as I'll start with one as a teenager, where my parents had this brilliant idea of seeing the country. And so we live in Grand Rapids, which is on the sort of eastern side of the country, right, Midwest. But my mom had a brother in San Diego. And so the brilliant idea is we would take the train from Grand Rapids to San Diego in coach.
Oh, wow. Oh, God. Okay.
That's a 20-some hour train ride.
Yeah.
And a couple things happened on the way. I guess as we were passing through Chicago, the train got shot at.
Good. Okay.
And then later, further in the Midwest, I was in Nebraska, wherever we were, we actually hit a cow. The train hit a cow. I couldn't sleep. But as a teenager, as a young teenage male, sitting in a coach seat for 20-some hours wasn't the most desirable thing to do. And then finally we got there and we got our rental car, and I think the rental car made it for a couple miles before that blew up, and it was a brand new car.
Oh, no.
And so it's sort of like the National Lampoon's Vacation to Start. And long story short, we actually took a sleeper car home.
Okay.
Which was a lot better.
Yeah.
Later in my professional life, I don't jump on a plane or a train seeking to talk to the person next to me. What I found though is when I do, I almost always get really interesting stories.
Yeah.
You know, I've talked to people who worked with the Dalai Lama, for example, or whatever. And I don't know, maybe I'm sensing something that makes me want to talk to that person, but I don't generally seek to do it. But one flight from LA to Detroit, I was in business class, and this man sat next to me. We didn't talk at all. Nothing was happening. And they started ordering or taking our orders for food. And the two choices were a pasta dish or steak. And I said, I'll get the pasta. And the guy said, why didn't you get the steak? And I said, well, I don't generally eat red meat on days I don't work out. And he's like, okay, all right. Well, anyway, turned out that was Emanuel Stewart, who was one of the greatest boxing trainers.
No kidding.
Probably in history.
Okay.
And so we hit it off, and we ended up talking for 3 straight hours about sports, about nutrition, about training. You know, he trained some phenomenal fighters, Tommy Hitman Hearns and Lennox Lewis and Vladimir Klitschko, and like a whole host of awesome fighters. He invited me to his gym in Detroit, the Gronk Gym. But just that, you know, not ordering the steak is what provoked the conversation. So that was kind of a fun one. Talk about how things happen, like that story. The reason that I'm here at Cavallo is because of a sick cat. Like, isn't that crazy? Like,
oh, okay.
If my wife's favorite animal had not been sick in late 2018, I wouldn't be in this job. So what happened was, we always come back to Grand Rapids. We were living in San Diego at the time, and we were getting ready to go that next weekend for the week of Thanksgiving. And when we go, her family's so large, every single night is filled with family activities. But my wife was worried about her favorite pet because he was suddenly coming down with something, and she didn't want something bad to happen, like have him die while we were not there. So I said, well, you know, why don't you go? You've got your big family coming in town. I'll just stay back, and then I'll go to Grand Rapids in a few weeks. And so I rescheduled my trip a few weeks later, and I had a full week of things I could do. And I was able to have a lunch meeting with the owner of the distribution business and sales pad at the time, which is where I learned about the company and the fact that they were looking for either growth equity or to hire a new CEO. And I just rolled off a pretty sizable gig with a Fortune 500 company. And so the timing was perfect. Like the planets literally like sort of aligned for all that to happen.
Wow. It's so fun. Like when you get out there in the world and you talk to people, you know, I know we keep thinking that in the podcast, but it's really, you know, just say hi and then, you know, ask questions and you never know. Right.
You never know.
It's kind of like the butterfly effect. You know, this one little decision kind of just had this mushroom effect that was kind of fun.
That's right.
So talk to people, get out there in the world and talk to people. So that's kind of fun.
You have any great travel stories that you want to share with us about getting out there in the world?
Oh God, let me see. Well, since we are on the Sky Lounge, I'll tell you two quick Sky Lounge stories. My second favorite Sky Lounge story is I'm sitting in a Sky Lounge, Delta Lounge in Detroit. Some guy sits next to me. His arm is all tatted up. I go, "Who's this guy?" I look up. Sitting next to me is Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh, wow.
Both of our flights got delayed, so one of my claim to fame, I got to party with Flea for a couple of hours in Detroit Sky Lounge. So that's my second. My favorite story is again the Sky Lounge story. About 2 years ago, my wife had a big birthday, and I decided I was going to surprise her and take her to Italy for her birthday. One of those, I'm not going to tell you where you go. Just pack your passport, pack your suitcases. Here's how to dress, etc. We get to the Sky Lounge. We're having our glass of champagne, and it's packed. It's one of those classic Sky Lounge. You couldn't find a seat in the place, which sucked in itself. But what really made it shitty was what my wife didn't know was that I had invited all of my kids, their significant others. There were 6 other people about to join us, and I'm like trying to save seats in the Sky Lounge and stuff. Well, the first 2 kids come in. My wife break down, sobbing, like, "Holy cow, what's going on?" People around us are now starting to do this, bring it out themselves. 4 more kids. So anyway, we created quite a ruckus in the Sky Lounge. I think we were going to end up on, I don't know, some woman threatened to put us on one of those Today Show, Hoda Boost kind of a things. But that's my favorite Sky Lounge story, Todd. I don't know if that's your question, but since it's Sky Lounge theme, that's my favorite Sky Lounge story.
Sky Lounge for the win. Now, you never know who you're going to see in there out there
awesome.
in the world. You got any great travel stories you want to share with us?
I always thought when I hear this question, I'm always like, that's a great question for my wife. She's been to 70 countries. No kidding.
70.
She's been to 70 countries. Most of those countries she went to by herself or with her sister backpacking in their 20s and 30s. And she was in the travel industry. So when we were thinking about where we were going to go on our honeymoon, we're like, she's already been everywhere. Like, where are we going to possibly go? And we wanted to add a new country. So we went to a country most Americans have never heard of. It's called the Seychelles.
Seychelles, okay.
It's an island nation in the Indian Ocean. It's very remote. We actually didn't see any Americans when we were there. And we flew Delta, our local airport, to Atlanta to DC. Nice. We did the Delta Sky Club. So there's your Sky Lounge. Part of the story, we're huge Delta Amex people. So love the Delta Sky Lounges. I've stayed at the one in Atlanta. I can't say how many times, or one of the ones in Atlanta, right? They have several. And then from there, we went to Dubai via Emirates, and then Dubai to Mahi, the main island in the Seychelles. And then from Mahi to a little puddle jumper to our island where we stayed most of the time to do scuba diving, and it was just amazing, tropical, warm water, Indian Ocean. So we took 5 aircraft to get there. I think it was 30 something hours. We had a really long layover in Dubai. In fact, the layover in Dubai was so long that we went snowboarding.
No, indoor snowboarding in Dubai.
In the mall of Dubai, they have a snowboard. They have a ski lift. And it was like, we went from like 115 degree desert heat, walked inside this controlled environment, and it's like freezing because it's covered in snow. That was really surreal, going snowboarding just right in the middle of our commute to our honeymoon destination.
Wow. That is a heck of a story, man. That is awesome. Brantley, it's all about travel and getting out there in the world. And I know you've done a lot of that. You got any great travel stories you want to share with us?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I had the opportunity last fall to walk the Camino de Santiago in Spain.
Oh, yeah.
And for those who aren't familiar, it is a pilgrimage, and there are a number of different routes. I happen to choose the French route, which is the most commonly traveled, and it's about 500 miles from the French border across the Pyrenees into Spain, and then across northern Spain to Compostela de Santiago. And it was easily one of the most transformative experiences I've ever had. I averaged it took me 38 days total. 3 of those were rest days, 35 walking days, and I averaged about 13 miles or so each day. Mm-hmm. And I met people from all over the world, Todd. It was incredible to see people from every corner of the globe who had taken on this challenge to walk across Spain. And there were so many wonderful takeaways. Probably one of the biggest takeaways I had was that there are infinite ways to walk the Camino, and using the Camino as a metaphor for life, there are infinite ways to do life and find what speaks to you and what inspires you, what your purpose is. I love Simon Sinek and start with why, to really think through what is your why and how are you applying that. So it was a huge adventure. I did it by myself, which was interesting. But like I said, I met people from all over the world, and there was not a time. Well, I can tell you one story where I didn't feel super safe, but it was more in my imagination than anything. But for the most part, it was an incredibly safe experience, and learned a ton every single day. I'm still learning from that experience.
And you keep up with people from that experience?
I do. Yes, I do. In fact, there are about 6 of us that stay in touch, and we were trying to coordinate a call last week over about 5 time zones, I believe. And so one of my friends who's in Australia, he does IT in Australia. He had created a spreadsheet for each of the time zones and trying to find, it was like an international doodle poll. It was crazy. But yeah, so we do keep in touch, and I'm really fortunate to have made those friendships, and I learned so much from those folks.
Wow.
And it was the other thing that was really cool is there were some people that I walked with that I met the first night I was on the Camino and kept in touch with and still keep in touch with to this day. And then there were others who made almost equally profound impacts on my experience that I may have run across for an hour or 2 on the walk.
Wow.
And we just happened to have an amazing conversation. So, yeah, if anybody's ever interested in learning more about the Camino, I love talking about it, and I could spend another hour talking about that. So you've opened a can of worms, Todd.
Well, talking about capitalism, actually, I was on my way to India with one of my daughter. The only time that I went to India to an Ayurveda retreat to learn the benefit of the plants, and we missed our flight, the connecting flight, and we had to stop in Dubai. And we stayed one night and one day, and I discovered Dubai, which is a beautiful city. People are extremely nice, but oh my God, what type of city is based on shopping? That's all there is, shopping. I was so shocked, and despite the fact that people are extremely nice, I've heard from other people that as a woman, it's a great place to have a business, and very safe. But all I've seen was malls and malls. And I don't think I could have lived in such a city if there was nothing else to do but go shopping, since I shop as little as I can, let's say, to that. But yeah, and I had a great time at Dubai with my daughter. We visited, and it's a beautiful, very interesting city, but again, based on shopping.
So you're glad you went, and you're glad you left.
Exactly.
It may not be on the list for next year, it sounds like.
For sure.
Okay.
My career,
Well, fun.
I was working at Pfizer and heading up to the Tuck School where I got my MBA to do recruiting. The Tuck School is in Hanover, New Hampshire. You fly into the Lebanon, New Hampshire airport. Pfizer's offices are on the east side of Manhattan. How do I get to Newark Airport to get my flight? Well, I jump on a helicopter at 34th Street, fly over to Newark, way faster than a taxi. And the trains weren't running at the time. Now, somewhere over Jersey City, my helicopter, one of the rotors on the helicopter hit a seagull.
Oh, no.
Very bad for the seagull, but also very bad for the helicopter, because now it had a dent in the end of one rotor, so it was completely imbalanced. So the rotor's going around like this instead of smoothly. It's rattling all over the place. You could feel the whole helicopter shaking. So the pilot said, "I know what's happening. Look at that, an abandoned baseball field over there." So he swoops over the stands and lands the helicopter thunk right at shortstop in the middle of this abandoned baseball field in Jersey City. And as he's coming into land, he says, "Don't worry, folks, we've had a mechanical problem. We'll get another helicopter in here and get you to Newark right away." Thump, we landed. Well, of course, the Jersey City police did not want 2 helicopters in their abandoned baseball field. So they had to send a limo for us, and it was rush hour. So we got to Newark late. So I walk up to the New York helicopter desk at Newark Airport and say, yeah, hey, I was on the flight ABC. And the girl goes, oh my God, you were on the helicopter that crashed. Yes, I was. I still need to get on a plane to go to Lebanon, New Hampshire. Now, can you help me? Now, so she gets onto her computer screen and she says, oh, look at that. There's a flight leaving LaGuardia in 45 minutes. Now, great. I'm at Newark Airport. LaGuardia is a long ways away. Don't worry. We've got another helicopter leaving for there right now. So climbed on the next helicopter, flew over to the 34th Street heliport, landed, picked up a passenger, dropped off a passenger. Helicopter got 100 feet up, 100 feet out over the East River, something, swooped right back down where it started. I'm so sorry, folks. We'd like you to take that helicopter over there.
Okay.
Climbed on the third helicopter, got to LaGuardia, made the flight, made the substitute flight, got to Lebanon, got to Hanover, interviewed kids. But yeah, I finally got to Hanover about 2:00 in the morning, and I called my wife, who was sound asleep, hadn't seen the news, and said, Lynn, I just wanted you to know I'm okay.
What?
Glad to hear that.
Okay.
I
Wow.
believe in statistics. Helicopters just don't crash that often. So, now
Except when they
I-
do.
Yeah, except when they do.
Yeah.
Obviously I'm here.
Wow. And so what's the final tally on the planes, trains, automobiles count for that trip?
3 helicopters and an airplane,
Okay.
and then an airplane home.
Okay.
So, came back into LaGuardia, I think, and took a cab home. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then you walked for the rest of the week.
Happily, I live 5 blocks from the Pfizer's office in Midtown Manhattan. So walking was what you did.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Well, it's about travel and getting out there in the world. I know you probably have a couple of DC related travel stories. You got any great travel stories you want to talk about?
Well, I tell you, one of the most memorable DC ones was, I flew from Atlanta to Reagan National so frequently. I was up there, almost weekly. And as you can imagine, during the winter, like so many cold cities, you get stuck. But Snowmageddon, for those who are in Atlanta, remember that horrific snowstorm. So I was in DC trying to get home and couldn't. And meanwhile, my poor wife, it took her 6 hours to go get one of our kids off of a school bus because the school bus was stuck. And the school bus wasn't that far away, but the roads were so treacherous. And it took her 6 hours to go, get this elementary school child off of the school bus. So meanwhile, I'm stuck in D.C., thanks to the, social media. I found a friend that was like also in DC. I didn't even know it, different
wow.
industry, stuck. So we were like going to bars, having great dinners, went and saw a movie. I talked to my wife, who's just like, she is truly scarred by that experience.
Oh yeah.
And so I was living it up and she was in wintry hell, but there's nothing I could do to help.
Yeah. Just can't get there. And then I think you went swimming with some pigs recently, right? Wasn't that a fun one?
We did. This summer, we took the kids to Exuma, which is one of the islands in the Bahamas. And, I think many people have seen footage of this island where these native pigs live. And you pull up in a boat and, your guide will hand you a bunch of carrots and, they are swimming out. And they're much better swimmers than I would have anticipated. What I didn't realize, though, is, and I should have, some of these pigs were like probably 400 pounds. No joke. Enormous. And so it's like a car swimming at you, and they've got these little legs, and while they're a good swimmer, they can't turn.
Okay.
So the moment you put a carrot in their mouth when they're swimming, you've got to shove them away from you because they'll just crash into you. And you have an 85-pound kid standing there feeding a carrot to a 400-pound pig. They're going to lose in a game of chicken.
Freight train with no brakes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So it was funny to have to shove them away from us. And then there was some huge stingrays that were also coming up, and they they get fed too. But I've actually had an amazing experience with my son at the Atlanta Aquarium with stingrays, and people only think of them as, the tails and the barbs and how dangerous. And I forgot what the guy's name was, killing the outdoor show guy.
Oh yeah, the Australian guy.
Yeah, the Australian guy.
Yeah.
But the truth is they are the most affectionate animals, and they're like dogs. They just want to be scratched. Now, you obviously have to be in front of them. But, our guide was like flipping, their two kind of side fins around. And if they could have smiled, they would have smiled. They loved it. You could just scratch them on the top and they just would swim up to you and just wanted nonstop affection. And it's just not what you normally associate with a stingray.
Wow. Water dogs, huh?
Yeah, they're so cool.
You're probably a man with a bunch of great travel stories. You want to share a couple of them with us before we go?
Gosh, there are quite a few, but one that comes to mind is a trip that I took to Denver back when I was active in the Mobile Marketing Association, speaking of being active in the community and by extension industry. And at the time, there were a lot of questions about how to do both text messaging and also mobile advertising. And we had to bring people together from around the ecosystem. So there were a bunch of us from media companies, a bunch of us from wireless carriers, a bunch of people from service providers, a bunch of people from brands and marketers. And we all got together in Denver to create documents and guidelines so that the industry, we would govern ourselves instead of inviting regulation, because we didn't take on a leadership role. And thankfully, we were very active in that. And after we had enough of these gatherings, it almost became like the traveling circus, and we would show up in different places. And one of those was Denver. And we got there at a time when it was winter-ish. I don't remember the exact dates. And there was snow on the ground. And after a long day of meetings, we went over to a rodeo, and we were watching, these people hop up on broncos and bulls and ride around, and some of them stayed on and some of them got thrown off, but they all were in the ring. They were in the arena. And it occurred to me that's a lot like people who innovate, people who say, hey, I'm up for this. Doesn't have to always mean that I'm staying on the horse or the bull, but I'm going to make sure that I'm participating. And I thought it was a great metaphor for me that I keep in mind, aside from the fact that we all had a lot of fun together in addition to the hard work. So I think that's the one that I would mention the most. Lots of good road trips along the way as well.
Wow, very cool. We'd love to hear some of your travel stories if you'd like to share a couple.
Well, like I said, I just come back a couple of weeks ago from two weeks in Costa Rica. We're really getting to enjoy the culture there and the beauty of sunsets over the Pacific Ocean and all of that. But I guess I've been doing a lot of traveling the last 2 years. Two years ago, this month, my family and took my family on a 20-day trip to Vietnam, Thailand, and Korea. And I'd never been to Asia before. And it was just really fantastic. I've known a lot of people who've been there, so I was able to kind of get some tips. And, we spent 3 days in Hanoi, Vietnam, and it was just the most spectacular experience. Everybody our age, I guess, grows up, watching the Vietnam War and all of that, but it's just a totally different place. Even though it's communist, politically or whatever, the people are so happy. They're very nice. We were only in Hanoi because we spent most of our time in Thailand. But I mean, food was good, place is clean, everybody is helpful. It was just really fantastic, beautiful country. And then then we went to Bangkok, Chiang Mai, and Phuket, Thailand. And part of the big part of the trip was I'm a scuba diver, and Phuket scuba diving was on my bucket list. One of my last 2 bucket list scuba places. And so I got to go scuba diving. My younger son got certified just before the trip. And it was, Thailand was great. I don't have to go back to Bangkok. It's, got 10 million people, and it's loud and noisy and whatever, but the food is really good. Chiang Mai is a much nicer kind of town and city in the north. Yeah, it was just fantastic. And then we spent the last 2 days in Seoul, Korea. It was the end of November, so it was much colder up there in the north, but the people were really fantastic, and we just had a great time. So yeah, so that was our big trip 2 years ago. We've gone on a few others, but right now it's kind of back and forth to Costa Rica, getting our house there in order.
Well, Steve, it's been great having you. And it's all about travel and getting out there in the world and seeing stuff, making stuff happen. Any great travel stories you want to share with us?
Yeah, the dumbest trip I ever took.
Okay.
The dumbest and not dumbest. So I mentioned that I lived in Australia for 3 years when I started Open Kernel Labs, and we were raising a B round. The company was being very successful. I mentioned one of our early customers, Qualcomm, and we had just come up with a new use case that was going to lower, or did lower the BOM costs of a device by $15 to $20. This is when taking a penny out of a phone was a big deal, and we were getting traction with many of the leading handset OEMs, LG, Samsung, others. So we were doing a B round, and I was living in Sydney, and we caught the interest of Benchmark. And so we were going through the process of raising capital, and got all the way up to the partner meeting, through the gauntlet. So this is going to be like the last presentation we needed to do. And Peter Fenton, it was Peter Fenton, Bill Gurley, Mitch Lasky. I mean, these were the denizens of venture capital, and I was going to be presenting to them. And he said, it's almost, we're getting ready to go on summer break. And so we're not going to be in the office as much as we usually would. And we happen to be redoing the offices. So, we're going to be gone for a little longer than usual. So if you want to be here next week, we can make time for you. Otherwise, it's probably going to be about 3 months. And I had no other business in the US at that time. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm literally going to fly from Sydney to San Fran, for an hour meeting.
Go have lunch.
Yeah. So I did the obvious thing. I got on the plane.
Yeah, sure.
I had the meeting. We had the presentation. We did not get the nod. So, it was sort of essentially 24 hours of air travel for an hour and a half meeting. We didn't get the money. But having said that, we did get introduced to Citrix, who became a strategic investor, which later was instrumental in the outcome for the eventual exit. So you never know where these trips are going to take you or where they're going to lead to. Oftentimes, it's not something that's on a map or an itinerary, but it's some eventuality, some sort of what would seem like serendipitous outcome that you're so happy about, and it all resulted from a shitty travel experience.
That's awesome.
Thanks for joining us in the Sky Lounge. Please like and subscribe to hear more from Tales from the Sky Lounge here and anywhere else you get your podcasts.